So I understand that some people won't want to work with the Psalms because of their connection to Christianity. But if you are curious, then in this video, I'm going to be giving an overview of this book, which is the Book of Gold, or Le Livre d'Or, by David Rankin and Paul Harry Barron. I'm going to be showing you some of the Psalms, what they can be used for according to this grimoire. And then I'm going to talk through one of the Psalms that I worked through recently. I performed a magical ritual, and I also added a few more bits to it to hopefully give it a bit more power. So as it says on the front of the book, the Book of Gold is a 17th century magical grimoire of amulets, charms, prayers, sigils and spells using the biblical Psalms of King David. So in the contents, you've got an introduction, also some editor's notes, and then the rest of the book is really all of the Psalms and their uses. Although I don't consider myself to be Christian, I am interested in the history of Christianity. The authors say that whilst we don't intend to attempt to trace the Psalms back to their roots, it's clear from their style and content that they were heavily influenced by Babylonian and Egyptian hymns and prayers, and to an extent could thus be viewed as continuing the magical traditions of these cultures. That's really interesting. Not something I'd ever thought about, and I guess as I'm growing in my knowledge of the history of magic, the puzzle pieces start to fit together. This is a logical conclusion when we recall the two periods of captivity for the Hebrews were with these two civilizations. With the cross-fertilization of ideas between the Jewish, Hellenic and Gnostic practices of the 1st, 4th century CE, the Psalms soon found their way into other magical systems. There are references in Greek texts such as the Greek magical papyri, which indicate the influence of the Psalms there in the 4th and 5th century. Significantly, at least 25 out of the 150 Psalms in Le Livre d'Or, so this book, the Book of Gold, have uses which seem to be derived from the published 18th century version of Sefer Shimush Telahim, indicating it was a major influence on it. Okay, so I won't go into much more. The introduction's not that long. Got some editor's notes. So I thought I'd go through some of the Psalms and see the uses. What you do have is you have the Psalm number, and then you have the use for what the Psalm can be used for. Not all of the Psalms, but there are Psalms that have these symbols on them and the phase of the moon that they should be worked within. And then you've got some commentary from the authors. You don't have the whole Psalm. However, I think it's good that they're not, because there are different translations of the Bible. You know, you've got the King James, you've got the NIV, New International Version, ESV. It gives you the opportunity to use whichever version suits you. So let's have a look at some of these. Any of you parents out there? In order to prevent children crying and in order to hold honeybees, write this psalm and attach it to the right arm of a child and he will cry no longer. And in order to take the bees, if you recite the first verse only from this psalm, you will be able to carry them to their territory. Now they do mention, I think in the introduction, that the manuscript wasn't always necessarily clear, so some of these symbols they do comment that they're wrong. This on Psalm 64, if someone falls into need, let him read this psalm 7 times every day and he will be delivered through the grace of God. Again, they comment on what the Latin is and they comment on some of the specific verses in the psalm. It doesn't really say what you have to do. I mean, some of them explain what materials or implements you need, but some of them don't say anything. So I think in today's application we might have to be, because I guess we have to adapt these to how we can do them now. Again, read this psalm 7 times over seeds and sow them straight away, and God's blessing will be upon the seeds and upon the field. I guess, if you're planting flowers or you're planting vegetables or herb seeds, you might want to do that. So I chose Psalm 149. Recite this psalm 7 times over oil and rub a sick woman's body with it and she will heal. So what I wanted to do with this is to help in the healing process regarding the treatment that I've had for my cancer. So I want to give a very strong disclaimer here about why I'm using this. It's just my opinion, so take it for what it's worth. I personally would never use magic in place of conventional medicine. I have had the recommended treatment for my specific cancer, and there are other aspects of it that I will continue to have. I'm not stopping those in order to do this. I think we need to remember that working magic is to enhance the probability of something happening. It is not a guarantee. So that's my little disclaimer. So that is not why I'm using this psalm. I'm using it as a way of hopefully enhancing the treatment I've already had and hopefully leading to a positive outcome. outcome. I chose this one specifically because it said rub a sick woman's body. So some of the others refer, I think there are other healing psalms in here, but they refer to men. So I wanted this one because it refers to women. I think Psalm 148 was similar. Yeah, also good for a sick woman when you read it over pure oil and rub her with it. So Psalm 148 or 149, but I chose this one, not for any particular reason. I just didn't realise until afterwards that Psalm 148 did that as well. So that's the psalm. Let me show you part of my, I guess you would call it grimoire. This is my, call it grimoire. It's a notepad and I've just collaged this over the top. I quite like this design. I cut bits out that I felt were quite well representative of perhaps a grimoire, a magical working. So I kept all my experiments in here so far. And what I will do, I'll cover bits of it up because some of it's personal. Hopefully I will zoom in so you can see this. So I performed it on 20th of March, waxing moon. So that was deliberate in terms of letting, where those energies are coming in, bringing those energies in. It was around 7 o'clock-ish. I can't remember the exact time. So I just gave a brief description and I've got all of the items. What I did was I set up my altar. So I had my directional candles. So I use this table as an altar. I use that quite often. Directional candles around the altar. I've got a white candle in the center, had a frankincense incense stick. I would like to try out resin incense, but I don't know if it'd be a bit too smoky in this small room. But anyway, so it doesn't specify in the psalm book about the type of oil. So I just bought some olive oil, not particularly high quality, just supermarket brand olive oil, and a suitable bowl. So I already had this, I bought this secondhand, this glass bowl for offerings. So I used that. Ritual structure, which I've written out below, Psalm 149. So either in a Bible or from an app. Now I used my phone. There's an app called Bible Hub where you can look up all the Bible verses, all the chapters, and it's good because what I did was I copied it from Bible Hub into an email, just a blank draft email on my phone. In fact, I had the whole structure of this working on my phone because my Outlook email is set up that it's black background and white text. And I find that helpful because it's not as glary, but also when you're in the dark with the candles, it doesn't produce too much light that it kind of detracts from the ambience. So I had this whole ceremony in a draft email on my phone so I could look at it because I wouldn't have been able to see in here. But I wanted to document it in my grimoire as to what exactly I'd done. So this is all set up the altar facing the east so that I'm facing the east. So what I did was I performed the LBRP, Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, minus the final Kabbalistic cross. So I would do the second Kabbalistic cross at the end. So once I brought the sphere of light down, I lit the incense and the candles. I performed the opening prayer because a magical working for healing, I wanted to involve Archangel Raphael. So that's what I did. Once I had lit all the candles and the incense, I then performed my prayer, starting with acknowledging the divine and then addressing Raphael for healing. It's personal, so I won't go into that prayer, but that's what this bit is here. That's the prayer. I asked ChatGPT to help me with the structure of the prayer and then I tweaked it. That was quite helpful. So that's all the prayer, and once that was done, then it was time to say the psalm 7 times over the bowl of olive oil, and I did that. And what my original plan had been was I had some of those, those makeup remover pads, like made of cotton wool, pressed cotton wool. I'd planned to dip that in the olive oil and spread it over the area of the body where the tumour is. In the Book of Gold it says rub oil over the body. I wasn't going to rub oil all over my body. I didn't feel the need for that. So I thought I'm just going to rub it on the area of the body where the tumour is, where the healing should be directed. That made more sense to me. So yeah, I was going to do that with dipping the makeup pad in the oil and doing it that way. But after reciting the psalm 7 times, it didn't feel right to do that. It felt like the makeup pad would create a barrier. So I actually dipped my hand in and did it that way. And that just felt better. That felt right. I did use the makeup pad to just wipe the excess oil off my hand. And I did notice that, because I thought, am I gonna get a bit bored reciting this psalm 7 times? But as I did it, and I was very deliberate in how I recited it, I didn't rush through, and I noticed that every time I repeated it, there was a more intimate quality about it. It just felt like a building of a connection with the divine, a conversation, and it felt right to be repeating it, if that makes sense. It just built that up. And then I had the direction to just sit for 5 minutes in contemplation and just feeling for when it's done. And interestingly, when I began that sort of 5 minute of sitting or for however long until it felt ready to finish, I heard church bells in the distance. Now I have a church probably about 2 miles from where I live, and often they do bell ringing practice. And I don't know if the bells were ringing while I was sort of going through all of this and reading out the Psalms, because I didn't hear them, but I was focusing on that. But I only heard them when I then sat in contemplation. But regardless, that felt right to hear those bells at that moment. It felt like an acknowledgement, which may sound daft to someone just hearing me say that, but I guess when you've worked through the ritual and these things happen, it feels like there's something to them. It just felt like an acknowledgement. So then before I finished properly, I expressed gratitude, thanking all the spirits I'd called, Archangel Raphael, blow out the candles slowly, stub out the incense, and then I performed the Kabbalistic cross to close the space. And so I've left a section here for results. I don't have a date as yet, but I do have a follow-up probably within a couple of months' time at the time of recording this. We will see at that follow-up what is happening with my tumour. What I don't want to do with this is assume what the outcome could be. And I have made it explicit in my prayer that I would like to be healed from this cancer and that my health is restored in the best possible way, but I've not been specific about what that would mean. I suppose I kept it flexible because I'm learning that the things that we ask for through our magical practice usually manifest in ways that we don't expect. And so I didn't want to get too hung up on how I wanted the healing to manifest, because I've let that go and put the trust in that it will work out in whatever way that is seen fit to work out. So in terms of results, I will record what is said at the follow-up, but also there may be other ways that the healing manifests that I hadn't factored in. So yeah, I guess compared to this, I did add quite a bit more. That felt right for me. But we've all got to work to what's right for us. And for you, it might be, I don't know, even just sitting with a white candle and obviously having your oil and things, but just having a white candle and sitting at your altar and doing it like that. For me, there's a big psychological component to this in that things I add are not just for show or for the sake of it. They have a correspondence with what the working is, but they are also there to psychologically enhance what I'm doing so that I feel that I've done as much as I can to give it the best chance of working. If working with Psalms is something that you're interested in, pick up this book. I will put a link to it in the description, and I will see you all soon.